Welcome, everyone.
Yes, this is me, Craftsdorf, on my side channel here with HotBoySpicy. Uh, it's the guy, it's the man, the
Yeah,
fellow himself. Um,
I'm like
so
the,
yeah,
they call me the lurking legend of the community.
yeah, I didn't know that. That's news to me. I
No,
don't.
they don't actually. I don't have
Okay.
any kind of tagline. No one calls me anything.
Uh,
They either call me
See,
hot boy or spicy. And they
we've
also call
only.
me, well, actually, I have a tertiary title, problematic. So there's that
Oh
too.
boy, we've only talked so much, so you could literally say anything,
Yeah.
I'd probably believe it. But anyway, so this is In the Den. This is a podcast, mostly we're doing, but also I'm doing. So basically, we talked after we did the Weep Club, and I was like, hey, we did talk about Bleach for a bit, and I had the idea of like, hey, let's talk about Bleach and reread it, or in the other order, obviously. And further then we had the idea of like, just why not record it and throw it up as a podcast somewhere. So that's what we're doing right now. After we finish Bleach, the plan is to basically alternate, and like, so Hot Boy Spicy will pick something. We'll both go through it, whether we're rereading it or one of us is rereading it, or we're both going it through for the first time. However it works out. I don't know what he's going to pick yet. He might not even know what he's going to pick yet, because even if he picks something now, it might change in the 4 months that it'll take to actually finish
I will
Bleach.
say I do
So
have something in mind. I do have something in mind, but it's not 100% yet. We'll see.
yeah, I have a few things in mind, so I don't fucking know. um, but yeah, it's literally just like we're just gonna go through stuff and talk about stuff, generally speaking, because like, I don't know, one thing I definitely liked from talking with you is that because we both have that same mindset of like, when we go into something, like obviously we're gonna have our personal preferences, but there's a level of, like, we both talk about like thematics a lot.
Yeah.
That's something we both care about and are interested in. We both also have our own creative writing, so there's a level of like, we're also making things, because I feel like sometimes in the community I see takes from people, the way they speak about the industry is like, well, they're not making something, so they don't like, they don't know the
Yeah.
pain of creation, is a line that I got from Chihaya is, and it's a good one.
It
um
is. Yeah. It's very true, isn't
so
it?
and like, so, and we just, but also, even though we're similar in some ways, like, we've this is like our third time talking. I
Yeah. Yeah.
think. So I don't see, because like, I have my friends, of course, and I love them, but you offer new perspectives. You have things that like, obviously we have shared media interests. We both really like One Piece and Naruto, for instance. I
And
only know some,
Bleach.
so, and that's true. I didn't know how much you liked Bleach. Is the thing. You made one video on it. I don't know.
Okay, well,
I've made twice as many videos as you on
yeah,
Bleach.
I have a
So,
little bit of I have a little bit of something to get off my chest actually at the beginning of this podcast, and I will. This is actually cool because when you mentioned the Bleach reread to me the first time, I'm going to be honest here. This is the first time I'm going to be honest about this. When you first mentioned it, I was like, damn. I read Bleach like maybe 2 years ago. I don't know if I'm ready for a reread yet, but it's so rare I get to talk to someone that thinks like probably more than me about the media they consume. Like if not as much as me, more than me. And I was like, I don't
mhm.
want to pass up this opportunity. And you were really ecstatic about the Bleach, about reading, starting with Bleach at least, because I guess maybe it's been a while for you. I don't know,
Well,
but
so it has been a few. So this is my third time reading Bleach, because
mhm.
I read it once on the Ninja the first time through. I read it again, and I got a lot more out of it. But it's also a kind of series. I feel like there's just so much to it. I feel like you can just kind of keep reading it, and there's always new things to pick up on, which I
Yes.
think is also true of like One Piece
Uh,
and Naruto. But especially with One Piece and me, I've been with One Piece so long. Like, not that I'm not picking up on new things, but I just feel like, like, and you've talked about it with Naruto, like you said so many things about Naruto. Like, I'm sure even if we reread and discussed Naruto, there's probably still be some things we didn't notice before. But
yeah.
I feel like Bleach in particular, it's has so much less of a good reputation. And in comparison, like, I get lots of observations about like One Piece and Naruto from other people. With Bleach, there was one other person who had some really good observations. We don't talk anymore, but like, but I think it's so interesting. Like, I feel like there's so much left. I think that there's so much ground to tread with Bleach, that I feel like One Piece and Naruto already have so much. Um, said about them, I feel like Bleach is just like it's just prime for a reread and just diving into.
Yeah, which
And I
is
did want, yeah. Go ahead.
which is exactly what I was getting into. Is that when I started like I think it was around chapter 15, I was like, oh, you know what? This is great that we're starting with Bleach. I was finally like, I was there, and then every chapter from then on, I was like, oh my god, because I knew already going into this first arc, like I love this arc so much because I already had this awareness that, like, from my recollection, I remember it being like just like the funniest arc. Like, it made me consistently laugh the most. And going through it, I was like, man, it's even funnier than I remember. And I was like, man, it's even cooler than I remember. And I was like, you know what? This is gonna be cool because at least now, I by the time we get to and finish 1,000 Year Blood War, I can finally make the 1,000 Year Blood War video I've been promising for years. So yeah, it's cool. I'm actually now glad we're starting with Bleach. I'm not just saying that because before I was just saying that. So
Yeah, because the big reason, because we were talking about it after we did the Weeb Club, and I just brought up some. I won't talk about them yet, but I brought up some things. But well, basically, a big thing that happens to do with my video, because I have at least 2 videos in mind, and we might come up with more, or I might come up with more as we read through it. But I just remember, I really remember it because, like, yeah, you're a smart guy, and you pick up, you're one of the few people I'll say something to. It's like, here's a good point that I thought of, and you're like, yeah, I already thought about that. And I'm like, oh. Okay, that doesn't happen that often, But then I talked about my point with Bleach and about Aizen and Arankar and how that all works for his character, and I was literally like, just the preamble, and you were like, "Wow, my mind is blown." I'm like, "Dude, we're not even through the door yet. Like, I haven't even
really
started."
Cool. It was really cool. I can't wait. I don't know if you're saving that for a video or you're going to talk about it when we get to it, but it is really cool.
I'm going to talk about it here because I will add that. So generally speaking, for the podcast, is because every series we're discussed is going to be a little bit different in some way. So like, because obviously, like, they're released in different formats. Like a movie is just going to be one episode, right? Like with Bleach, we're doing it like in 7 volume chunks, so it's going to be like 9 to 10 episodes. Because with Bleach, my goal is I want to have as good of an understanding as I can get of it. So I really want, if anyone has like points about this material that they want to bring up, or maybe we bring up something and it makes you think of something interesting, because that's another reason, is because like one of the reasons I really like talking about media with other people is because even if I have like really good points and observations, sometimes other people have points and observations that I then like think about, and I'm like, oh, you made me realize something else, and then so then there's like a mutual gain there, because like that happened a couple times when we talked, because you would say something and I was like, oh, that made me realize something else, and then so we both get something out of it, because you taught me something new, which I then realized something new and then gave that back to you, and now you have a new thing. Yeah, so it's
never-ending epic cycle. I love it.
Exactly. So I'm kind of hoping that like people can add it, like because this is going to be a more like loose and freeform discussion. Because with the Nen show, it's very much like we kind of go chapter by chapter. I don't really want to do that here, but we'll still talk about generally the first 8 volumes. And yes, we have both read the series before, so I will be referencing stuff that comes in way later. So if you haven't read through all of Bleach, sorry, this one isn't for you. I mean, you can't. It's our feelings on media in general are dated. I guess you can go back and watch the Nen show for Bleach, because that was me and Matthew was going through the series for the first time. Not knowing those spoilers, but yeah, going forward, how often the podcast is released, how the episodes will be structured is going to vary. So like there could be even a longer manga that will we won't be talking. We'll be talking about more volumes because it's like, well, neither of us have read it before, so let's just read the whole thing and talk about it generally, right? Or but with Bleach, it's more like I just feel like there's so much to Bleach that even if we broke it up into arcs, I feel like we'd be here forever on some of those arcs, because well, let's just do Bleach in 5 episodes, okay? How long's the Arankar discussion? Is like 8 hours. It's like, fuck, no. Yeah. We kind of need to break it up, because I feel like it's just really dense and it's really interesting. Yeah, and I think that about covers that preamble.
Yeah, just hop into it, I guess. So yeah, and then one other thing, we haven't talked about this a lot, Crafts, but when we talk about it on the show, are we doing chapter by chapter, I'd assume?
Oh no, I mean, if I'd say. I think we should just talk about that's also going to vary by series, but for Bleach specifically, we could go chapter by chapter if you think you have enough to say. I mean, we'll be here for a minute. I'm sure. It's a lot. That's.
I guess what I meant is like, I guess yeah, because for me, like I have the volumes in front of me, not the volumes. I have the Manga-C version of the volumes, the illegal scanlations. But actually for you, because you take notes, so what I'll probably do is I think my tactic is going to be piggybacking off you and your notes is going to be my tactic, because I will admittedly have not taken any notes, but there's some stuff like on my mind that I still remember, so I'm typically pretty good about that. But yeah, so we'll kick it off. What is actually, okay, I need to start out with this question. I think this is a very important question. Okay, so disregard any future art, wipe it out of your brain if you can, for just this question.
Okay.
Out of all the characters introduced that we interact with in this first arc in the Substitute Shinigami, because if for you guys who maybe don't exactly know, Volume 8 actually ends pretty perfectly, like at the end of Substitute Shinigami. I mean, they're heading to the Soul Society in the last chapter. So it's I
noticed that when I picked I was like, oh hey, this is like a really good ending point, because they have the fallout from the Rukia getting captured, and then they do some training, and then they go into Soul Society, and it's like boom, right there. It's like that's a great ending.
Because I was assuming we were going to bleed in a little bit to like the beginning of them actually arriving at the Soul Society, and I was pleasantly surprised. I was like, oh, this is like a really natural place to pause for this first episode. So it's cool. Anyway, so from what we've read in the first 8 volumes, who is your favorite character just for this section of the story?
I think it's got to be Ichigo, but I also really like Orihime, and Rukia, of course, is really good.
But you got to pick one.
Ichigo.
Ichigo. Okay, cool. Gotcha. For me, it is without a doubt, no question, Orihime. Oh my god, is she a treat to read in this first arc?
Oh my god, it's because you mentioned the humor, and she's so fucking funny. Like holy shit, like
she sits at the forefront of it. She is, oh my god, all the gags with her are just, they're so fun. They're so fun. The future me with the the rocket coming out of the boob, like it's perfect. Dude, and not only like the best gag is like the most like unironically realistic. It's her daydream, because that's like how daydreams work. It's like a lot of these like narratives in your mind blend in with each other, and one thing like kind of unnaturally segues into another event.
You're talking about the one where she's imagining her with Ichigo in the park, and then they start running, and then a fucking sprinter comes in, and it gets all intense, and then like it turns into a boxing match, and then there's a fucking assassin.
That's how dreams and daydreams work. They nonsensically like blend in with each other, and like it's just so like Kubo perfectly encapsulated how dreams and daydreams go. Like that's it's funny, and it's like man, this is some real shit right here. it's cool. Yeah. So
because you mentioned earlier, it's that like this is it. Yeah, you're right. This is like it's the funniest part of Bleach, because not that the manga doesn't have humor later, but it's so, I feel, with this arc being more episodic and having more of these smaller stories rather than being overall on this huge scale conflict of some sorts. Like even when those arcs have humorous moments, they just feel like drowned out in comparison. Where these, it's like the conflicts are smaller, so these smaller. And I'd say there's just denser in general. Like there's just more comedy. Like the first chapter even just has like there's like a table flip, and there's like a note on the table that says like this only for comedy purposes or something. Or
yeah. Like, I'm actually looking at that right now.
There's just so many silly or fun things. And like I love the gag with Rukia's art, where it's like she likes cute things but she can't draw, but she also draws cute things that are it's just
and all the dude, I don't know if they're, I guess I'd imagine they're volume exclusive, but the little doodles Kubo has at the end of chapters that kind of sometimes it gives like these funny explanations for what's happening in the background with other characters, like how they're reacting to certain events. Like Colin has a bunch of great ones.
Yes.
Ichigo's sister has a bunch of really good ones.
Yes, I especially remember the last one is like because they're going to Soul Society, and then you have Keigo and Yuzu who are like they're alone, so they're just crying, and you have this fucking nearly adult ass man who's a teenager and like an 8-year-old girl both crying over this for the same reason.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good.
But then he's also really good with using those in like meaningful ways too, or symbolic ways.
Yeah, that's
like,
exactly what I was gonna say. Then all of a sudden, because like most of the time it's like these like funny, goofy guff, and then sometimes it's like the for the chapter where Ichigo like unleashes the water spout, right? He like unleashes his power on the on the Minos. You get the big water gush at the end of it. And it's really cool. It's like, oh, that's so cool. Like that's like what happened in this chapter. Oh my god! But then there's other ones. I can't remember exactly one. There's one really cool one. It's like
I mean, my favorites from the reading. Was the Dragon and the Princess?
Yes, that one. Thank God. Thank you. Thank you.
That was probably.
I was like, there's one that I thought was really cool, but I guess it's not cool enough for me to remember. But it is cool. Yeah.
Yes, because that one's cool. A really good one where it's like you have Tatsuki as the dragon protecting Orihime, but she can't, and then Orihime steps up, and now she's the princess protecting the dragon. Let's fucking go!
It's so cool, man. It's so cool.
The other one, it's cheating because I just remember this being pointed out to me. But so after when Ichigo's training with Zangetsu, I say in quotation marks. There's the one of the volume insert pages where it's just like it's a picture of Zangetsu and he's like facing forward and he's got you see his shoulders and his general silhouette with the cloak and stuff. Way later, when Ichigo has some big stuff with Zangetsu and sort of understands his true nature and he ends up like leaving Ichigo, there's another volume insert page that's him, but it's him facing back away from the reader instead. Like he's in, so we get this one when he meets Zangetsu and he's meeting him, and so we're seeing him face on. Then later on he's departing, so we see him from behind, and it's like, Kubo, you motherfucker.
That's
no,
crazy.
I like I said, I'm cheating because I had that one pointed out to me years ago, and I saw it again. And I was like, hey, I recognize this one because it's Kubo will just do shit like that. Like there's some foreshadowing. Like I think probably the craziest potential piece of foreshadowing that I noticed was with Uryu Ishida. And it might be an accident, but we've sort of talked about that where it's like even if it's an accident, there's still something beautiful about that, right? Yes. Like the fact that it works so well.
I'd say arguably more beautiful, in my opinion.
Yes, that's fair. Yeah. That's absolutely fair too. Because like people overvalue planning and it like what the intent behind it. I think the ability to read into it is just as valuable. But anyway, so Uryu has this thing with like sewing and plushes, right? Like he's into crafts and those things. And I noticed because there was one of Orihime's friends came to him with a little plush, and he kind of like fixes it, right? And I thought that was interesting because as we find out in the 1,000-Year Blood War, a big part of his contention with like his family and his dad in particular, like his dad is a doctor, and yes, and he had a vision, because he saw them operating on his mom, and as a result, he sort of like has this contentious relationship with his father that we see later. He's obviously way more invested in his Quincy bloodline, which more strongly links to his mother, because she was killed by the fucking main antagonist of the whole series. And so but I thought it was interesting so that even because I think he ends the series, he becomes a doctor, like he gets over that fear, and that's a big part of his arc. Right. So but I thought it was interesting that even at this point in the story when he's rejecting it, there's still a moment of him fixing a body. It's just not a human body, it's a doll, right? So I was just like, wait, that's interesting, considering it's because we haven't touched on this character yet in this reading, but I remembered it from later, and I was like, oh, okay. So just I don't know, maybe it was foreshadowing, but it's still just a little interesting connection that I thought about.
It is cool, and I guess you could say it's his little I don't know, baby step-ish way to kind of confront that trauma, I guess, if you want to actually like attribute it narratively.
That's his arc is like that's everyone's arc, honestly, because like it's so concurrent, I think, with like all the characters, like with just fear and courage and confronting their loss and grief. It's like so very clear from the very beginning, and it never stops being a thing. Like I mentioned it with Uryu, and it's like, well, yeah, like the fact that, because that's a big one I think about, because it's also tied to the silver arrow that people have a lot of problems with. Because that's how did they get the silver? Like, because he had a misunderstanding. Like him using the silver arrow is literally him overcoming his deal with his mom and his aversion towards his dad and his profession, because he saw that as dehumanizing him his mother, but like no, there was another purpose to it, and him using this like, and
Yeah.
it's there's so much going on there that
Yeah, and
you know that he wouldn't recognize if he didn't accept that. Anyway, what were you gonna say?
Yeah,
Sorry,
and you know, speaking, because you mentioned the idea of confronting fear with courage, something that even Eisen in the final chapter, you know, explicitly talks about.
yes,
We see our first real moment where it's heavily emphasized, actually, toward the end of our reading in volume 8. And I thought it was, because I didn't remember this, I thought it was really cool that the first time it's confronted is with Ichigo's first real challenge as a Soul Reaper against Urahara. And
yes,
Zangetsu says something really interesting. He says, you know, like, turn back. What do you have to fear? And this is, again, what I love about Kubo, because there's some things Kubo leaves out. What he leaves out, though, is visually depicted. And that is, you have nothing to fear, Ichigo, because look at what's behind you. I'm behind you. You're not alone, right? And this is completely parallels, like, Ichigo versus Aizen way later. Because Ichigo, in the same vein, who's behind him? All of his comrades he's protecting. He acknowledges them. Right before he transfers Aizen to another battleground, he acknowledges them and knows what's behind him. It's the same message. It's like, you can have courage because you know what's behind you. And that is far more impactful than any fear in front of you, right?
yes.
Charge forth so you can protect the things behind you. And that's Ichigo's whole MO. So it was when I was reading, I was like, oh, that's so cool. This is the first time that whole concept of courage is being hammered home. And who's behind him talking to him? You know, it's Zangetsu. You know, him. It's cool. And just
you even made me think of because one of my favorite lines from this reading is because when he's fighting with Uryu and they're sort of arguing a bit about how different they are, and he's like, "We're as opposite as bookends. Fine by me. Fighting is better back to back."
Yes.
And it's like,
yeah.
that's such a cool line. And like, you know, him, so see that when you said, oh, behind, and it's like that made me think of another, because that's another thing with Ichigo about his arc in general is, because, you know, his mom died and that was highly traumatic to him. Like, I love the way it's portrayed because in his mental landscape with Zangetsu in the city is interesting because on the outside it looks like a normal city, but what happens when he falls beneath? It's water. He on the outside he seems fine, but inside he is grappling with this loss, this grief, this sadness, right? And like the series so often uses, I mean, rain is just a common symbol of sadness in general, like but it's so recurrent, like, you know, it rains when he fights Grandfisher, and you have all these memories of his mom being dredged up in his failure to avenge her, basically, right? Orhime's poem on volume 3 mentions the rain that joins the sky and earth, and it ties a lot to her character. So there's a really good Bleach video on the channel What the What about Orihime, and at the very start of it he talks about the myth of Orihime and Hikoboshi, which is it's also relevant to the Tanabata festival, and it symbolically connects to Orihime because if it rains too much, the two can't meet. And so you can sort of see that with.
I didn't even know this.
Yeah, no,
That's so cool.
Yeah, so because the poem on volume 3, where she's on the cover of, mentions that it's, if I were rain that joins the sky and earth that otherwise never touch, could I join two hearts as well? And that's just so interesting to think about when it regards to like her character and Ichigo, because they like all the characters have some sort of form of loss that they're dealing with, sure.
Yes.
But like with Ichigo and Orihime in particular, because like they are sort of distanced by their grief, because like Ichigo lost his mom, who, as we see in the flashback way later, has some personality traits that are kind of similar to Orihime. Then Orihime lost her brother, who was protecting her. Ichigo himself is also a big brother, and he's also very obsessed with protecting the people close to him. So because of their grief, they're basically sort of like trapped in some ways by their, because, Orihime is so used to, like, a big part of her arc is because she's so used to being protected by these other people, she's not able to, like, find the strength to protect herself as easily. And, like, even in Soul Society, she's being talked down to, when honestly during parts of the series, like, she in potential strength she's incredibly powerful. Like, she catches Aizen's eyes being like, oh shit, you've got some interesting powers there, right? So she has all this potential, but because no one is around, everyone around her is like seeing her as a princess. They're protecting her. So even as she's getting stronger, she's still not being respected as much, basically. And of course, Ichigo is like, he feels the need to protect everyone because he doesn't want to lose anyone. And, so again, their grief is sort of like hurting them in a sense, basically, and limiting them. Yeah. So the rain is keeping them at bay when it could connect them.
Yeah. It's I didn't even know about that. What would you call it? Like a legend tale?
It's a myth, mythology
okay.
thing. So for sure.
I'll have to look into that. That's really cool. Yeah,
no, because that's one of the things. So my sort of hypothesis with reading Bleach is because, like, look, I love One Piece, I love Naruto, I love Hunter x Hunter. They're all phenomenal stories, but I think Bleach has a more like literary awareness than I've seen. It has a lot of literary awareness, and it does some insane things that I have not seen in those stories. And not that they don't, like, obviously Naruto and One Piece reference a lot of like religion and mythology as well. But like, I don't know, it feels a little different with Bleach, I guess, if that makes sense. Maybe I just don't understand enough of the symbols, but because with that example, it's taking an actual mythology thing that a Japanese reader would commonly know, because like every year they celebrate a festival that revolves around this myth, right? Like, so you learn about it growing up, and now they're seeing this. Then they'd read this story that takes Orihime is a character in both the myth and in Bleach, right? So it's like you're supposed to associate with this myth with this character, and then there's like a level of like twisting and using it thematically and symbolically, that I feel like I don't see that as often as just being referenced. And just being referenced is fine. You can even read things into that, but I don't know. Kubo's just does some interesting things, and there's so much more that I think I'm so excited to talk about as well, because and lots of that I don't understand as well. Because again, you've mentioned you're not being familiar with this. I wouldn't have been familiar with that myth unless I had a friend who literally looked into it, because he knew, hey, wait, this character is named Orihime, so is this mythological character, right?
Yeah.
So like,
I've been
that's what I mean when I feel like, there's so much to dig into, right?
Yeah. You're exposing me as a fake weeaboo, man. You're saying all Japanese people know this? Damn, I need to catch up.
I mean, just like, because like Momotaro is often like put in the same category as like other children's stories that I'm familiar with growing up, like Cinderella or Romeo, or not Romeo and Juliet. It's not as much as a children's story, but like Snow White. Because all Momotaro is considered in the same vein, but only in Japan, where it's like, to us it's more of a trivia thing. We didn't grow up watching Disney's Momotaro because it doesn't exist. It's not real. They were adapting other, Pinocchio, Snow White, all that kind of shit, right? So it's just so, and then there's a lot of like religion in Bleach as well. Like we'll really talk about later, but they literally call attention to it earlier because they mentioned Lord Buddha in the first chapter. Rukia mentions that there's 108 scientists. That is a reference to 108 is an important number in Buddhism. It's the earthly desires, basically. Zoro also references it.
I was about to say Zoro, yeah.
Yes, yes. 108 pound phoenix. Yeah, that's also a reference to that. That's the same Buddhist number and the concept.
Okay, interesting.
So there's just a lot of references to Buddhism. Most of my knowledge of Buddhism was learned.
I'll let you pick up on all those, because I'm not going to pick up on any of them.
A lot. I don't know how much I have to say for this first reading, except for very general stuff. Like, I mean, Naruto is also a Buddha character in that, like, him and Ichigo go through these journeys of understanding, right, of themselves and other people. So that's one of the, like, there's other, So I'm losing the thread a bit, but yeah, that's I'll hopefully remember more as we keep talking. But anyway,
I am really excited to keep reading, because I enjoyed this arc more than I remembered. I really did. And it's making me wonder, because I remember when I first read this, just for clarification, guys, I started Bleach many, many years ago. I was like 15 years old, 14, 15 years old. I watched an anime. And just to give you the night and day difference in my perspective on the series, I remember trying to watch Ichigo versus Aizen in the anime 4 times, and I fell asleep all 4 times. Finally, after the 5th try, for clarification, like, it was late in the day, typically when I would try to watch again, and I was already tired, but still, if it was supposed to be a climactic finale, it wakes you up, if you're really excited for it, but I fell asleep. Well, fast forward, I'm an adult in my 20s. I read it for the first time. I'd only watched it in the anime, and I got to that point, and after I finished reading it, I was like, this is just the best Bleach fight for me. how did I fall asleep? I don't know. Maybe it's I would have to go and look at scenes in the anime and see how some of my favorite scenes in the manga are adapted. Maybe it's an adaptation, or maybe it's just me being young and I didn't understand. And obviously, I didn't understand a lot of what I understood later on. But
yes,
that's crazy because now I'm going through it again with this reread, and I like Substitute Shinigami even more. And I'm wondering because I was kind of on the opposite end of a lot of people I hear in the Western audience, where people were like, "Oh, Soul Society is the best." Soul Society was actually it was like I don't know if it was the bottom. It was at least second to the bottom. My first read, I actually preferred Substitute Shinigami over Soul Society, even though Soul Society was so freaking good. I'm wondering if now Soul Society will also go way up for me. Well, not that Substitute Shinigami didn't go way up, but it went a little bit up, even though I already loved it. So just getting more appreciation for it, I guess, and especially in retrospect, right? I'm thinking of a lot of these scenes in the context of future events, like just even little things, like just this isn't really like a huge, like a really cool observation or anything, but it's just kind of cool to think about sometimes. Like even seeing Uryu, right, where him and Ichigo, you mentioned them being back to back. Uryu internally, he tells himself, well, in reality, I hated myself for being weak. I never once blamed the Soul Reapers. Well, I mean, he even explicitly says to Ichigo, he's like, actually, I kind of thought the Soul Reapers were right in this situation. Like, yeah, they kind of like, yeah, the world was about to collapse. Like, okay, fair enough. So, and that kind of adds context to even the 1,000-Year Blood War, because at the end of this, at the end of like his internal monologue here, we get like this confirmation of acknowledgement where he's like, yeah, like all this time, I've been trying to confirm myself. Like I've been trying to justify my powers and my role as a Quincy, as you know, and I've been trying to distinguish myself from the boy that couldn't do anything years ago for my grandfather. So when you go to the 1,000-Year Blood War, if you have this in your mind going to the 1,000-Year Blood War, you don't think for 1 second that Uryu is actually a traitor. Not even for 1 second, because we get that conclusion already. We know Uryu's path, and we know for the rest of the series he's just a tsundere. Like he's not going to betray these people, because it was Ichigo, specifically Ichigo, a Soul Reaper, who helped illuminate this for him. So yeah, it's really cool just to have that perspective, like especially when we go into 1,000-Year Blood War. It's like, yeah, like we if we had this in our mind the entire, and I don't remember what I thought when I was a kid reading it week to week as it was coming out, because I did after I caught up with the anime. The only manga I read was 1,000-Year Blood War before I finally went back and read it. I don't remember what I was thinking, if I really truly thought Uryu was a traitor. I probably thought, because at the same time I was also reading Naruto, I probably thought like, oh, he's going to be like Sasuke, where he's going to be like, where he's going to be like a traitor.
Being
he's going to be a traitor, but then he's going to come around at the end and be a good guy again. But in reality,
it's actually really funny that you mentioned that, because I remember, I don't know how familiar you are with My Hero Academia, but there's also there's a rival. Yeah, but people, when there was a thing with Bakugo where he was, is he going to be a traitor or not? And he didn't at all, and people thought he would. And it's really funny because it's not really that common a thing. It doesn't happen that often. It's literally just Sasuke. Sasuke is that formative to people because he's, it's such a big deal in Naruto that people think this is a common thing. Kind of isn't. So it's really funny that like the idea of like Uryu's a traitor, just like Sasuke. Bakugo's going to be a traitor, just like Sasuke. And it's like, no. Not really.
Yeah, because I definitely fell prey to that, probably. I can't quite remember what I thought, but it's safe to assume that's what I was thinking. So, and I'd imagine the community week to week was also, funny. Sasuke, he's generational character. That's what it is.
But I love him. Love that edgy little boy.
But this is Bleach. Not Naruto.
This is Bleach.
Fuck Sasuke. He's not Uryu. Uryu, cool.
Sasuke's not even real.
Yeah.
But Craftswork, Bleach characters aren't even real.
Okay, this is going to be a stupid question.
Go ahead.
Is Karakura a real town in Japan?
I highly doubt. There might be now. Okay, to Wikipedia. Fuck me.
I don't actually know, because Bleach might be real if Karakura is a real town.
Kamakura is a real town, and when I start, the first Karakura that shows up is literally Bleach, the wiki for Bleach.
Okay, so it's not fictional, or it is fictional. I don't know what I'm saying.
Though speaking of that, I wanted to bring up a really interesting point. This was pointed out by my who I was friends with for a good while, and we just haven't talked in a while. But because it's so interesting, because it's like it has to do with because so basically in the first chapter, what happens is Rukia comes in, and I do like how she very clearly like works as this like introduction to Soul Society, because she has this very rigid like the rules are what matters, right? Like she's gonna follow her orders, but then that conflicting with her actual feelings, right? Like when Colin comes up and she's like, oh, we were just exterminate him. That's what we were told, and
it's really cool.
She didn't think it was right to question orders.
It's really cool because her and Ichigo do the exact same thing, and they progress the exact same way. They both consistently say one thing and do the opposite. For Rukia, it's her adherence to Soul Society dogma. For Ichigo, it's it's what he's protecting. In the beginning of this, at the beginning of this series, he's always saying like, well, I didn't sign up for this Soul Reaper crap. I'm not going to go saving everyone. And then even during the end of that, I think it's in chapter 2 or 3, where Rukia is like, well, you see, like this is what's going to happen. Like if you're not doing your Soul Reaper duties, like this is going to be happening everywhere. And you could have stopped it. Even though Ichigo saves the kid, he still says at the end of it, he's like, yeah, well, I still don't agree with you. Blah, blah, blah. But it's like, but he's, Ichigo.
He uses it, how he explains it is like he's helping Rukia fulfill to fulfill his debt to her, basically, right? So that he's using his personal feelings as justification for what he's doing on the larger scale as well, right? Yeah. So he's finding his individuality, because that's Ichigo's thing. It's also like Uryu sort of even holds Soul Society against him. Like he's sort of treating Ichigo as this mouthpiece of Soul Society, right? But Ichigo isn't like thinking about he doesn't know about the Quincy's. He doesn't know about any of this shit. He's looking straight at Uryu, right? Which is how he's able to just cut through all of like Uryu's like posturing about like the bigger picture, when really what matters is it's just these two people and what they know about the world around, right? And like they're Uryu's Ichigo literally understands his grandfather better than he did, right? Yeah, because he's just loving Ichigo.
Yeah, and I feel like it's really cool because by the time we get the dialogue from Ichigo essentially saying what Rukia always said he needed to do as a substitute Soul Reaper, where he was like, I just want, I think this is like, I'm going to be butchering the quote, but it's like, I know I'm no superhero. I know I can't protect everything and everyone. Mm-hmm. I just want to protect as many people as I possibly can. Something like that. And I love how it is because Ichigo becomes more like a Soul Reaper at the same time Rukia becomes more and more like your typical average,
a human, right?
Yeah, like human, like teenager, right? Where she's like interacting with all these people, doing a bunch of goofs and gaffs, doing doodles. It's really cool to see, and it's like I noticed that. I was like, oh, because I don't think I'd ever really explicitly thought of this before, like I don't know what you would call it. It's just them being more verbally honest about what their true intentions have always been. It's just cool to see.
Well, I think that factors into the understanding part, because a big part of the mechanics of like the Zanpakuto in particular is self-understanding, right? Like the more they recognize and understand about themselves, the more power they're able to get from their sword.
The blade is me, right? The blade is me.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, to finish my thought earlier is, so basically what happens is the Hollow attacks, and Ichigo isn't strong enough to protect what he cares about, but Rukia is able to give him the power to do so. And so Ichigo's comfortable place is when he is protecting everybody, because he failed his mother. He doesn't want to fail anyone ever again. He puts all this burden onto himself. He has to be the strongest. He has to be the one to protect everyone. And as we kind of see with like Chad and Uryu, is on a level he's able to accept their power, but I'm pretty sure there's a moment in Soul Society where Chad loses. And Ichigo kind of like loses his faith in Chad to protect himself.
Yeah.
Because like we see them there's like a flashback of them in school, and they are able to fight, and Ichigo respects Chad's strength, but then like once he loses that trust in him, he doesn't have that like, so basically Ichigo wants to protect everybody. So but like what I'm trying to point out here is like Rukia, so because like Rukia only intended to give Ichigo half her power, but Ichigo took all of it because he needs all the power. He wants all of it so he can protect everything, right?
Yeah.
What I think is interesting is, so the way the arc ends is Rukia sacrifices herself to protect Ichigo, right? Because she turns herself in so that Ichigo and everybody, this daily life that she's come to love, can continue on without her. Like, everyone even forgets that she exists, except for the people who are tied to the can see ghosts.
Yeah, she commits to the same self-sacrifice she did in the very first chapter, right? Yeah,
exactly. And Ichigo also loses his Soul Reaper powers. So it kind of happens throughout the whole series. And what basically, because Ichigo's place of comfort is protecting everybody. So when he's no longer comfortable is when other people are protecting him. And you'll notice that whenever he leaves Karakura Town, it's because he's literally been pushed out of his comfort zone because other people are protecting him. Rukia protects him at the end of this arc, so he goes to Soul Society. Hime also leaves. She sacrifices herself. She goes to Aizen willingly so she can protect Ichigo and everybody. So
what you're saying is in the very first chapter, by the way, because what happens? It's Yuzu. She goes, "Run, Ichigo." She's trying to protect him, and Ichigo in that moment is being faced with this like, "Hey, dude, walk into my sword," and he's like hesitating. He hears that. He's like, wait. I'm the one that's supposed to be protecting you. And then all of a sudden, that fear, that's that courage idea. We were just talking about it earlier. Yes. It's like, no, I'm supposed to be protecting you. I'm walking into this fucking sword, right? The very first chapter, we see the exact phenomenon you're illustrating. It's so cool.
Yeah, and it's also ties to the Fullbring arc, because in the Fullbring arc, this town isn't the same. It has this unusual quality to it. Like, it's no longer Ichigo's place of comfort because Ichigo doesn't have his powers. He's no longer able to protect, his friends like he's used to, right? Yeah. So it's just like, it's, an interesting way that Karakura Town is used symbolically. That is just really cool and interesting, and because it does evoke that same element to Ichigo's character. And
I'm so glad you mentioned Karakura Town, because I actually mentioned this in my one Bleach video. I say when Ichigo is at his worst against an opponent, by the time you get to the Arankar arc, that sort of ending, those ending segments of the arc, Ichigo seems more powerless than he ever has before, but it's kind of cool because he's not in the real Karakura Town. He's not. He's in fake Karakura Town, right?
See, I remember
so it makes so much
point
sense
about Karakura Town in that video, but I couldn't remember what it was off the top of my head because But now that
I literally mentioned this in my video, like I say something akin to, but this Karakura Town was a fake. He's not able to see what he's protecting, and then the next time he faces Aizen, where is he? He's in the real Karakura Town. He sees the people he's connecting. The first thing he thinks of is Yuzu and Karen, and he senses them. He senses they're okay. He's like, okay, time to go. It's so cool. Yeah, and another and that bleeds right into the conversation I've wanted to have on the sidecast, like Keigo. Glasses girl that loves Orihime.
Chizuru, yeah.
Chizuru, yeah. I think their inclusion in this story, because from what I remember, I don't think they ever feel like they don't do enough or anything. I think they're a perfect inclusion to keep Karakura Town really feeling alive. So whenever they are in danger way later on, you're really like, oh shit, Ichigo, protect them, please. Don't let Glasses Girl, Chizuru, please. I want her to keep standing Orihime, no.
Because it definitely, when, like, oh god, Orihime protecting her and Tatsuki, right? Like,
yes.
Yeah, and of course later on with, like, the fact that fucking, like, Keigo and Mizuru, the shorter womanizer one, and then, but the fact that Don Kanoji comes in fucking fake Karakura Town is so fucking amazing.
He's so good. He's so good. He is actually top 3 characters in the first arc. I'm not even kidding. He's
legitimately, like, obviously, he has he doesn't really show up that much later, but so overall, but like his arc is really good, where it's just like, he has his heart in the right place, but he really doesn't understand anything about this world that he's touching with, interacting with, right? So he's he has to sort of take, like, because Ichigo has this the arc opens with the stuff about the zodiac signs, right? And he's just like, I don't believe it if I can't see it, right?
Yeah.
Which is really interesting when you think about, there's another character who has that mindset later on. Fucking Ulquiorra, right? Who he's like, oh, the hearts,
because he can't see the. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's like, can you
I hadn't even
touch?
thought
Can you
about
hold
that.
it in your hand? Can you see it with your eyes? Right? Like he sort of has this very nihilistic kind of like, the only thing that is real is that which exists. You know, what human, the meaning, like things like love, of justice, honor, like the things that humans come up with don't matter, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, the heart being a symbol for, you know, the bonds between people, right? Well, because like even the way like the first poem, we fear that which we cannot see, like you know, obviously like you know, ghosts is, you know, what they're kind of like, you know, because that's like the big Ichigo's unique quality is he sees ghosts, right? From
Yeah.
you know, the first, when you first meet him. But also, I just think about like, you know, the heart is just a big idea I think about throughout all of Bleach, where it's like, you know, fearing connections with other people in a sense, is, you know, because like there's always these sort of like boundaries the characters are, you know, have between them, and they aren't able to make those connections totally, even though they do have bonds between them. But like it's
Yeah.
you know, like I think
And
another poem gets at that, but go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna say, and I'm from my recollection, I'm pretty sure this is right. Doesn't Yoruichi even in this segment of the story mention the heart? She goes like,
Oh
well,
shit.
yeah, to make your decision whether you want to be a part of this world or not, like look to where your heart lies, or something
Yeah,
that,
you're right. I think you're right.
Like, yeah.
Yes, I think you're right. Well, because the other line I thought of is when Ichigo's talking about his mom and how he felt himself, he was guilty because his actions led to her death. He said, "I tore the heart out of our universe because she was the
Oh,
center
yeah.
of their family. She was the one they all loved so much, and he ripped out that's their strongest bond, basically, right?
Yeah, and then little
in their family.
little did Ichigo know, she actually preserved like the mightiest heart of all that would later like preserve
Yes,
their
'cause,
lineage, right? Like their
God.
family, right? It's so fucking cool.
Look,
So yeah,
honestly, like the reveal, like, cause like the reveal that fucking. How do you pronounce his name personally? Like, cause I have a way I pronounce it, but I'm like, is that correct? I don't know. With the
what?
fucking main antagonist man, big bad dad.
Oh, Yuhabaha, Yuhabaha.
Okay, yo, that's fair. Okay,
I think that's how
um,
I think that's how it's actually. I've been told at least.
or the
And
katakana, you
yeah,
mean?
he
Or
could
like
he could have
in
been
general?
capping to me. My friend told me it's
Okay.
Yuhabaha, but
I've been
so
kind of
saying
pronouncing
that.
it Yuhabak, which is a slightly easier way to pronounce it.
That's what
And
I
obviously
remember. King of Lightning would always say Yuhabak when I
that's
used
probably,
to watch him
and
back
obviously
in the day.
it's more a reference to Yahweh, which is the I think he's the Jude. That's a way to say God, and I want to say Judaism, but because it's spelled YVHV.
Oh,
So that's what he's in reference, because he's basically meant to be a sort of like Judeo-Christian God, basically. Like we'll get to him.
yeah.
But like the reveal that he's responsible for Misaki's death, just fucking
Yes.
God, because it's like Ishin was like, yeah, she should have been able to defeat Grand Fisher. She was incredibly powerful. Why couldn't she do that? At the realization, it's like, fuck.
No.
Because especially like, because I don't know, especially like thinking back, because like obviously, you know, with Grand Fisher, like, because I think, do you have a favorite of these little arcs, person? Because like there's so many good ones.
Ooh, dude, oh god, that's a good question. I asked you favorite characters, and I haven't even.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
there's.
because I really like the Uryu one, because that has like Chad and Orihime's moments of coming into their own. But also it might be the Grand Fisher one, be it with Ichigo dealing with his mom's death and us getting
Ooh,
his backstory.
I think I have
and
to
the
agree
fucking,
with you, man. I think I
yeah,
have to
it's
agree with you. Yeah. There's so many, even the little moment with him and his dad, where he's smoking the
yeah.
cigarette. Yeah, like that, just that little moment. It's like, you know, it's like, I'm proud of your mother, that she did that. Like, no one would ever blame you. You were just a kid. It was the parent's duty to protect the child. You have it backwards, kid. Like,
I think
you
the
know.
other part that messed me up about that is just because in the you know, we've seen Ichigo for at this point, like, you know, over a dozen chapters, and he's, you know, he's kind of a tough guy. He's a bit of a, you know, he can be a goofball, but he's usually got an angry kind of a stern expression, right?
Yeah.
But then like we see him as a kid, and even if he's like being teased or bullied, you know, if as long as he has his mom, he can still smile, and like just thinking, oh no, where did that smile go? It's like,
No,
Ichigo,
no.
no. So yeah, it's just and then just the way the Grand Fisher, because he even talks about how he like heart memories, and he weaponizes what hurts them the most, basically. So like with Ichigo, he literally makes his mom, like, you know, like Ichigo's going to hesitate to hurt his mom, right? Again, the person he killed, because they even point out how he's killed Soul Reapers, right? Because he's able to weaponize people's loss and stuff, and loss and grief are big deals in Bleach. So you have like this, this literal manifestation of what Ichigo believes, his, caused his loss, basically, right? So, and just it's just a good arc.
Yeah, I honestly, dude, I completely forgot Grand Fisher does not come back toward the end of this first arc. Like, I was waiting kind of for Grand Fisher. I was like, hey, I still remember Grand Fisher's out there. But I guess he doesn't. I guess he comes
back
after he comes
briefly.
back.
Yes.
Yeah.
I can describe. He gets destroyed easily by Ishin, basically. I think it's after. I think it's after Soul Society, but before Arrancar. And especially what I take from that now is just the fact that, like, because Ishin knows that Grand Fisher isn't really... Because I remember people being angry, even not going through Bleach. I remember seeing people on 4chan being angry about that because the way this arc sets up Grand Fisher as being... He's the manifestation of Ichigo's loss, basically, of the pain of, something to overcome and defeat. And then Ishin just, like, one-shots it in, like, a chapter that's in a transitionary period between arcs. And maybe that felt unsatisfying to some people. But, like, thinking back, that makes complete sense because Ishin fucking knew that Grand Fisher isn't the real reason for Misaki's death. It's fucking Yuabak, right?
Yeah.
So he's able to overcome Grand Fisher easily because he understands that, where Ichigo, he's so wrapped up in himself, right? And his own... And, like, blaming himself for what was happened, even though it really wasn't in his control, right? Like, Misaki was the, the real one with control of the station was fucking Yuabak. And what's the last thing Ichigo does in the manga is he fucking cuts that motherfucker in half, right? So, and, it's just one of those things that stuck with me back even before I touched Bleach, and then thinking about it now, it's like, no, this makes perfect fucking sense.
Speaking of all of these things, because, like, all of Ichigo's connections have been based on a tragedy. His hollow powers are because of Aizen's intermingling in his birth. His Quincy powers, you can directly relate them to his mother's death and the whole and Yuhabaha's whole 1,000-year plan. But at the end of the day, they become later boons. And I think for the hollow side of things, I was thinking, at least when we see in Ichigo's training with Urahara, I thought it was really cool to think, and maybe I'm thinking too much about this, but I was like, oh, like, this is the first scene we see, like, Ichigo's you could say Ichigo's hollow powers manifesting. And I was like, they're surprised that Ichigo's held out as long as he has. And I was wondering, I was like, is that maybe because of the hollow inside him that's been, that's been a part of his power since birth? I'm wondering if it's because of that power. If not for that, I'm wondering if he would have just immediately turned into a hollow. Because there's no explanation. Urahara goes, wait, guys, don't do anything yet. He hasn't dissipated and reformed like a hollow normally does. Let's wait for it. So to me, this is like Kubo essentially telling us, like, there's something more going on. There's a reason why Ichigo is not immediately...
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, but when I think about it, it's a little bit more cool. I was like, oh, this is like the first, because we know later on in the 1,000-Year Blood War, Ichigo acknowledges this as like a part of him and a strength, at the end of it all the pain and sorrow, it's still for him. He acknowledges it as a boon, as a part of him. So, and I think this is just one of those examples of it being beneficial for him and him, So it goes into him later accepting it as a good thing.
And you mentioned even like your soul is your sword, I think, or something to that effect earlier. And there's even a poem about how your pride is also like a blade. But I just thought about like losing and then overcoming that loss is like a blade being broken and then reforged, which also happens several times in Bleach, right?
Yeah. In this first
exactly just right here where he gets a sword destroyed, but then he learns its name and he that's I don't know, because I was going to bring up because I feel like a sticking point people have with Bleach, not even just Bleach, just media in general, because I think it's also happened with like say One Piece with Gear 5 and the revelation of what Luffy's Devil Fruit actually is, because I think people get really hung up on, they want to know things. They want to understand this fictional world, right? So when you have a series that like gives you a piece of information and then later goes, actually you've been wrong for 500 years, it's actually this. I think people tend to not like that. Because I remember with Bleach, one of them that I thought of when we saw Ichigo's sword is because Byakuya later frames it and Kenpachi's sword as permanent release Shikai, where it's constantly in that first form. But then it turns out that's not actually a thing, and so I just remember that being something that people because what's interesting about Ichigo and his unique circumstances is because like he's got Quincy blood, but he also has a hollow fucking Shiro sealed away inside of him, right? Aizen's artificial Arankar, that monster that he made, and it's part of him basically because and we literally see them inside his inner worlds because we see Zangetsu as a Yubak, a younger Yubak, as a representation of his Quincy bloodline, and then we have the sort of like the white Ichigo, who is it's Shiro, and what's interesting about that is because like the way like Ichigo's sword. So like later on, Thousand Year Blood War, when Ichigo and Renji get their swords reforged, we find out that the Zanpakutos are literally made from beings that are hollow-like, basically, right? Yeah. So the question is like, which answers the question of like, well, where did Ichigo's Zanpakuto come from? Because Kenpachi stole his. He took his from a dead Soul Reaper. It wasn't his sword, and that's why he has unusual things going on with his Shikai and Bankai and stuff, because he literally just has just been using someone else's sword. Where with Ichigo, his Zanpakuto is basically created from Shiro, from his hollow that's been inside him this whole time. Which of course understandably gives him, like you were talking about, these unusual relationships with like his hollow powers and how he's able to be so exceptional in some ways, like because he came out with a fully formed hollow mask, but he was still a human, so he's already like tapping into like the Vizard and Arankar-esque abilities.
Yeah, I mean it's such a cool thing because there's even like some foreshadowing there. It's like, is he? I don't remember what character says it, but they literally say like, is he a Soul Reaper or a Hollow? And it's like, just like an Arankar. Hey, we're going to see that way later in the story. I see you, Kubo. Yep. I see.
Yeah, because I think how they frame it is like Vizards are, they're Soul Reapers who acquire Hollow powers, and then Arankars are Hollows who become more like Soul Reapers. Yes. Even in this reading, there was a mention, because when we see Grand Fisher becoming an Arankar, they talk about how like, Soul Reapers, you gotta destroy them in the head. And I think Ruki also mentioned something about the durability of Soul Reapers, because I think another thing I just remember people talking about with Bleach is that because the characters can take a lot of damage, so there's this idea of like, Kubo, you don't know when he's killed off a character because he'll just like, this character died, and then they'll just come back later, but it's not really, he doesn't really do that. It's actually just like people not understand, because like, I don't know, like Soul Reapers have the same mechanics as Hollows where their head has to be destroyed, and so generally speaking, if they just take a lot of wounds, they can be fine if they're healed up, basically, and we sort of see that here too. So I don't know, just the manga's pretty consistent, all things considered. Like all of the mechanics of Ichigo's powers make sense. The fact that like pride comes in the Fullbring arc. Like how the Fullbringers acquire their powers is by having pride in something and an object that they're attached to that relates to their pride. That literally is just like an expansion on what we see with Orihime and Chad,
which later is revealed to be the Fullbring stuff. Like then there's other people that have done that. Yeah, that's cool.
Right, like Orihime is proud of her connection with her brother and her hairpin, and Chad is proud of his skin, his bloodline, his lineage that connects him with his grandfather, who he took a lot of his ideals from, and who he is for like don't hurt people, protect them, and so he becomes a shield. It's like, let's fucking go.
Yeah, and dude, with Orihime, like it's, oh man, I was thinking about this when I was reading it. I was like, because that whole story, especially how it intermingles with the, I don't know what you call it, her hairpiece, is that what it is?
Her hairpin, yeah.
Hairpin. Okay.
The snowflake looking, yeah.
Because she mentions when she first got it, she hated it, but at least my interpretation is. We also get the information that their last conversation was a bad one, where they ended off on pretty bad terms on her.
Yeah, and she didn't say goodbye.
She didn't say goodbye to him, and she regrets that. But it's really cool because you could say her wearing that is almost like she's wearing her regret and like oh man, it's like that thing that she hated. It still has a negative connotation in that it reminds her of the words that she couldn't say all those years ago. But now, later on, she finally could say those words, put them to rest. And then later on, when she gets the powers, she does something that will wipe away any regret. She's stepping in front of the person always protecting her. Like her brother always protected her, and even even in Death's Door, she could never reciprocate for him, and that regret was always there, and it was symbolized by what she wore. And now, what she wears that later became a symbol of love and healing and resolution by the end of that conflict with Sora when he's a hollow. Now she can finally reciprocate with Tatsuki, where she steps in front, and what happens? That hairpin becomes her power. It awakens her. And just things like that, just little things like that to me, like really get me riled up. And another reason why Orihime was like my favorite character in this arc, because I connected that to her flashback and stuff. It's like, oh, that's so cool. She finally gets an opportunity to reciprocate, and the very thing that becomes her power is that hairpin that symbolizes what used to be like her deepest regret. Yeah, I don't know. It's cool. It's really so fucking cool. Because now she's not going to regret anymore, because she's got the power to protect as well and reciprocate. Like, oh, man.
Very good. But yeah, also I kind of bring up a bit, but Chad is also just a really fun character. I like his just like he likes cute things. I like the running jokes of him just being super durable and like the fucking like, oh yeah, I got hit by a motorcycle, had to carry him to the hospital. Like
my favorite Chad scene in this first arc is when Colin is running away from those girls, and then fucking Chad sees him and just he likes cute, and then he starts running with her.
Joins it, yeah, it's very
the black
good.
haired girl with the glasses, yeah, he just joins. It's so funny.
And they reference that later when he meets Colin again. It's like reunion.
The reunion
Because he's just like, oh,
for.
Cute plushie. I also just like
so
the way
good.
he like fights the hollows that he can't see. Like when he's fighting the bird one, and he like rips up a fucking like a pole, and like it's just the way Ruki is able to see for him, and he's just so fun.
And then Godbow comes in with the more comedy even in that chapter, because at the end of it you see like this random family that their power went out because of it. It's so great.
Yeah, very. God.
The comedy is just top notch in this. Honestly, like if you said Bleach, if you told me from here on Bleach is going to stay the same, it's essentially like secondarily, it's like I don't think that's a fucking word, but anyway, secondary, it's a comedy manga. Like it's shonen, but it's also shonen comedy. If you were to tell me that after reading the first arc, I would not doubt it. I'd be like, yeah, you know what? Bleach is as much a comedy as it is a shonen. I believe it. Because God,
not actually true, but it's still because like that's I can because people people dismiss like, oh, every arc is the same. I don't. Because you even did a video about rescue arcs. I have not seen that one, but I know you at least aren't dismissive of them by any means, because it's like rescue arcs are good. Calm down, and but it's really like this one I guess it does stand out because it is like even all the little arcs I think are different from each other in a sense. Like even if there's ultimately like I could fight against the hollow in some way, but it's like they stand out to me. So it's cool.
Because the people, I feel like oftentimes they're super quick to say something is repetitive rather than like, you're just not posing the right question. Why would an author choose to repeat, like, when you're talking about formula, at least like the main idea being like, oh, we're going to rescue someone. Why do you think an author's doing that? Like, think about that first before you like criticize it, because there could be like a deep meaning to this, and those distinctions on who we're rescuing here and who we're rescuing here might make or break something being either like trash because we're repeating the same thing, or beautiful that we're repeating the same thing, but those minor distinctions go a long way in like qualifying why we're doing it again. Like there's a thematic meaning here. There's not only narrative purpose, but there's a deep thematic meaning, and I feel like not a lot of people, but at the end of the day, that's why videos like ours, I think, still have a lot of utility, is because as long as those narratives persist and as long as people stay open-minded, it's cool that we can change people's minds. Because I got Absolutely. On that rescue arc video, I got a lot of comments saying like, oh shit, yeah, rescue arcs are dope, HotBoySpicy. You changed my mind. So yeah, thank you.
Let's fucking go.
Yeah, rescue arcs are great. Based Hueco Mundo, based Soul Society. Yeah, it's they're good, and all these, and you know, funnily enough, and the I, I almost said Monster Trio, in the big three, yeah, they do all, you know, they all have a lot of rescue arcs, and they all do something completely different with it too. So that's cool. Anywho, what was I talking about before you mentioned rescue arcs? Shit.
Chad. No, we were talking about Chad, and then
I feel like you mentioned something else, and maybe I'm just. It doesn't matter. We'll
things being. Yeah, I don't remember. Sorry.
No, you're good. What was I going to talk about? Oh, okay. I'm glad I remembered this because this is a little kind of funny trivia. All right. And I don't know. You might just go what to this? Like, I don't even think that's what it means, hot boy. And hey, feel free to tell me because I might just be dumb. The name Bleach. I shit you not. For many years, like when I was like reading it, when I caught up and I started reading the manga in 1,000 Year Blood War years ago when it was coming out week to week, I never thought too much about the name Bleach. I didn't really like. I don't know. I don't know why I never paid any attention to it. But I remember when I first read the manga a few years back, the first chapter when Rukia literally cleanses a soul and is explaining it, I was like, oh, that's why it's called Bleach.
I'm pretty sure that's
cleansing the souls.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure Kubo said something to that effect somewhere, or he's explained the title. I'm pretty sure, and bleaching the soul is indeed. Yeah, you got it. You know,
good. Yeah, because like a few years ago when I finally like went back and read it, like literally the first chapter, it was like Eureka. I was like, oh, that's why it's called. Okay, I felt so stupid, so I was like, why have I never thought about this? Like it took that many years of knowing Bleach.
Yeah, sometimes it just becomes so normal to you that you don't think about it twice. Like I just saw it was a Twitter thing where someone was saying about like because there's characters from Winnie the Pooh called Kanga and Roo, and it just took because if you're exposed to that from a kid, you wouldn't necessarily think these characters are named Kanga and Roo, and you don't question why it's like that. So then they realize like years later, because they're kangaroos, right? Like, even though it's so obvious, because as an adult, if you'd never touched Bleach and you read it for the first time now, you'd probably also pick up on that immediately, right? Because you're coming into it with a fresh set of eyes, where when you were younger, you just, it's called a series called Bleach, sir. And you just watch it and you don't think about it. And then you don't have a need to think about it again until it's challenged, right? And like recontextual, like rereading it for the first time, and I get it now, right? So yeah, no, I understand. That makes sense.
Yeah, I just thought it was. I still laugh at that sometimes. Like, damn, I can't believe I didn't really know the meaning of the name like until years later, after I was like already, I guess, kind of a Bleach fan. Albeit, I became a way bigger Bleach fan after I actually read the manga all the way through. Yeah, I appreciate it way more.
I'm really curious because one day I plan on watching Bleach, even though I've already read it, because I do want to see the differences. Because the mainly I'm aware of, they changed because like, they add more like scenes between Ichigo and Rukia that make them seem like, oh, they're gonna get romantically involved. They don't. So I'm just, so just some. I remember hearing about how they made some changes, and even to Ichigo and Orihime, that kind of like.
So that's why there's still to this day some Ichigo x Rukia fans that are still butthurt.
I mean, being a fan of it is fine. It's just like when you hold the series to that, that's where I get a little too like, okay, it's not your story. Come on, like write a fanfic. Have your own creative expression. Just don't force your creative expression on other people. Yeah, no. So it's like. No, yeah, that's what I just remember hearing about that, and I think I've seen like one scene where it's like, okay, yeah, I can totally see why there's like you could because I'm reading it, I really don't feel a lot of romantic undertones between the two at all. Admittedly, I don't even like. I mean, actually, with Orihime, like literally, I'm pretty sure Tatsuki asks, "Do you like Ichigo?" And she literally just starts thinking about it, right? So it's like, that's already, but that's just the manga. Obviously the anime is its own thing, and that's fine. But it's like. That's a problem you get with anime adaptations sometimes, is that they maybe take the material in a way that it doesn't go in the original, and then they have to like double back basically. So it's the limits of adapting an ongoing story. So
I mean, it is very. I don't know. It's super. I don't know. I might be self-reporting too much here, But I don't know. This to me is like it's really reminiscent of like my life too, because I've had like a lot of like platonic friendships with girls in my life, and every single time, I mean, my friends, they're very, they're like my friends in real life are just, they're always like, hey bro, you guys going out? You guys going out? You guys go-" So and it's nice to read like that same kind of idea be expressed in Bleach, where it's like legitimately like Ichigo and Ruki are just like really good friends, and like, you know, they're a great team in this Soul Reaper shit. They came about through circumstance and obligation, but then they become really good friends, and it's like really cool to see them like say, like, no, we're just friends, and then them
Yeah,
stay
and
friends,
like
right?
even as you're saying that, it's like literally the whole Soul Society arc happens, an entire arc where the main goal is Ichigo saves Rukia. That especially the anime adds this more romantic, you know, a couple more romantic undertone scenes to with them. But it's like no, the fact that it is platonic is nice in its own way too, where it's just like
Yeah.
yeah, the fact that he as a friend cares for Rukia so much that he goes through hell and back for her, like that's awesome, right? You know, does he do it for Orihime as well? Yes, but you know that's not important here. You know, the fact that
Yeah.
he does love them both in their own in his own way for different reasons, right? And he is willing to do these things for both of them. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool to see. Cool to see.
Wait, I've been bringing
Um,
up a couple times. Have you thought about the poems that much? Because you might have a personal connection to the poems that.
yeah. Okay. So for you guys that don't know, I was planning a video a long time ago where I was going to write my own poem based on every Bleach volume poem, and I had most of them done. The very and it would have been so great for this podcast, because for each volume, like all the ones that we cover, I would have just like read my poems just on here. I lost them all when I dropped my phone in ocean water. I
No.
lost them all. I don't know why I never just, because typically what I'll do is I will if I'm not thinking something through, where I just want to get a quick note out, I will I will get on like my notes on my iPhone, like the notes app, and then
Mhm.
I'll write something down. But then I'll always typically, especially if I'm going to turn it into a script and record it, I will copy and paste it to Google Docs, so I'll always
Yes.
have it. So I don't risk that. For some reason with the poem, I didn't do that, and I'm so bad. But although I still remember some of them somehow by heart, like I think reading some of this actually reinvigorated like I don't know, it rekindled that memory that was locked in my head, and I actually remember some of them now from reading some of these poems. But a couple of them anyway. One of them, oddly enough, is one for fucking Grimjow. I don't know why. I guess it's because it's so simple. It's just roar like the tiger, soar like a god. That's it. That's so. I guess because it was so
Okay.
simple, I just remembered the Grimjaw one, and I don't even remember what the original one was for that volume, but I did remember that one. And for this one, uh, no, for volume one, what I don't remember what I had for volume one. What was it? Volume three, the one about joining Sky,
Yes. Heaven and Earth. Yes.
Heaven and Earth.
With the rain. Um.
Yeah, what? It's something like, uh, fuck it, I don't remember. I don't remember. And I the for volume one, it's we fear that which we cannot see, right?
Yes.
Um, I thought I remembered that one. Anywho, if I remember it, I'll let you all know. If I remember it during the rest of this, I'll let you all know. But yeah, I had poems, and I really liked the Bleach poems. Admittedly, there's a good lot of them I think are misses, but they might only be misses because they are, of course there's the translation part of it. It's like
Yes.
some of that rhythm and some of those nice, that nice prose is going to be lost in translation, of course.
Because
And
I do want to say overall, like you know, there's some hiccups, especially early on. But as far as like translation, like early like 2000s official manga translations, Bleach is probably like the best one I've read, because I think One Piece has issues. I think Naruto has issues. Yu
yeah,
Hakusho has
very
a
much
lot
so.
of issues.
Very
Dragon
much.
Ball has some oddities because it was like, you know, these are manga that are translated with audiences in mind that this is going to be their first manga that they ever read, right?
Yeah.
You know, so there's baggage that comes with that. And I think overall though, Bleach probably has like the most solid and consistent translation, even which is also unfortunate because because the language is also really important to it in some ways. Like if you look up how Bankai is written in the original like kanji, you see the manji symbol, the twisted cross, basically, that would later be appropriated by the Nazis. But like it's a major symbol in Buddhism, basically, and it's literally in like what's probably like one of the most like identifying words from Bleach, Bankai, right? Like that was but that doesn't translate. How do you translate that? How do you put the symbol into into an English word? Like that's because it's
especially that symbol.
Exactly right.
It has other connotations that are problematic. Yeah.
Right, because and it's still in the manga. Like there's one point where the cross of Ichigo's sword is that symbol, right? So it still shows up occasionally, but it's definitely like it's not in the series nearly as much because the Bankai kanji is not represented in English, right? So yeah, of course there's issues. So I say it's a good translation, but it's just like there's inherently with any translation, there's going to be things that are lost. So I mean, really, Viz just hates translator notes, and I really don't like that about them because, like, again, I understand it's a manga that they're making with younger viewers in mind who aren't manga literate. Right, who aren't right, so it makes sense that they just like they translate it as like the fact that they use Soul Reaper instead of Shinigami, right? Like because and even in general at the time, fan subbers and fans translators would really use those Japanese terms because they don't even want to try to translate them or they think they're too pure or whatever. Sometimes we still like hockey is also just a word in Japanese, but we use it just untranslated, or ki in Dragon Ball, right? Just because there's another connotation there that with like a power system, so that the word kind of becomes like untouchable in that sense, even though like it could be translated. But yeah, so I don't know, translation is just a whole ass thing, and so I understand why they made the choices they did, but I definitely wish for an annotated Bleach with more because I feel like I remember hearing some like at the very end of the manga. Rukia and Renji's daughter is literally has either it's like the kanji for Ichigo's name in her name, basically. Like they literally named their kid after Ichigo. And you kind of notice it because her name is Ichika, but it's even more direct than that in Japanese, in the original Japanese, basically. So so it's just always things like that are going to get lost, right? So but translator notes can alleviate that by like, well, here's how we translated it. And here's what's lost, right? They just explain it outside of the manga, like that's but Viz doesn't do that. They still don't do it. So
if only, yeah. I mean, Viz still hasn't made Zolo Zoro, so I mean,
like I said,
stuck
One
in their
Piece
ways,
has problems. So even though, but anyway, but did you have anything to say about the poem specifically? Because I mostly I'm not super into poetry. Like I remember when I was doing it in creative writing class and we were talking about poetry, like the teacher's assistant was like, well, why don't you focus more about the poem, how the poem makes you feel? And my response to that, well, it really doesn't, I don't feel a lot of emotional attachment to it aside from like what I'm getting out of it in like analyzing it and what I draw from like the potential meanings and right. And so that's mostly what I focused on with these poems. It's just like, what is it, especially how it relates to the character, because they're usually associated with the character on the volume cover, right? So I would think about like, oh, this is what this poem could mean, basically. So what were you going to say?
Yeah, I am, I don't know how this is going to, I'll just say, poems, just sitting down and writing poetry, I actually hate so much. And I learned that also like, being in school as well, being in high school, we were writing poetry. However, if I regular writing, like even for like my books, I've noticed like I just have a very poetic way of like putting a lot of things, especially when I get like monologues of characters and how they're feeling, and like some of my description of what's going on is like maybe I have to accept I'm just a poet, but I can never sit down with the intent to write poetry. It's really weird. If I sit down with the intent just to write poetry, I hate it and I can't do it. But when I'm just writing my stories or even my videos, like you look at many of my videos,
you call them poetic analyses. And that's why it was surprised me when you said that, like, oh, I'm not into poetry. I was like, what the fuck are you talking about?
I'm
but now I understand. Now I
Yeah.
get it. Okay.
It has to naturally flow out of me, based on the process of me just writing about stuff I'm passionate about, and it happens. And that's legit how me writing poetry for Bleach. I never expected I would be sitting there writing poetry, but it's because I liked Bleach so much. I was like, damn, Thousand Year Blood War came back. I was watching those episodes and I heard the poems in Japanese because I don't know if you've watched any of Thousand Year Blood War, but they literally have the voice actors will recite the poems from the volumes at the
That's
end.
cool.
And there's even new poetry.
Yeah.
There's new poetry that Kubo wrote for the specific episode at the end of every episode.
Okay, So I knew that people liked Thousand Year Blood War, but I haven't really heard that many specifics. I've just been like,
they've added whole new scenes, bro, and they're like, a lot of them are great. There's one really bad one, but a lot of them are great.
No, because that's really cool. Because obviously, even if the general adaptation, because how my a friend of mine who had seen a lot of Bleaches, they only really nailed Kubo's art style in the Fullbring arc, basically, because Kubo's art is so, like, we haven't talked about that much, and honestly, I think it gets better. Like, even now, it has a good style, and he's just really good as an artist. But like, just in general, Kubo's just a really good artist, and he's just so good with like one of those images that just made me go like, holy shit, was when Ichigo cut Urahara, and then you see the carved out landscape, and just that whole sequence was really fucking cool. And when he comes out of the pit as well, like, Kubo's just really good at art. Fuck, I forget what I was gonna say. Actually, feel like I was going somewhere with that.
That's fine. We get lost in the sauce, all of us, when we're talking about these epic stories, especially when it comes to something as epic as Bleach. And dear God, am I just the Urahara, I didn't remember being this cool this early on, man. Like, that final, I don't know why, but last night, admittedly, I was pretty late on catching up to this stuff. I kind of caught it last minute finally, before this. Literally, I was at work today. Finally, I only had 5 chapters left from last night, and I read them on my break at work, and I was having a great time. But I remember the chapter I left on last night was just the final panel of Urahara. This is when he first takes out his Zanpakuto, and you see it for the first time. What does he say? And it's just it's such a raw panel, and it's like, because we've seen Urahara a lot, we know there's always more than meets the eye to him. Like, a new viewer would see that based on not only his design but his mannerisms early on, and how there's always that one panel at the bottom of every page anytime he's on screen where he's looking really observe, like he's really zoning in on everyone, like he knows something no one else knows, and he's he's sizing up all of these young bucks, and to see that come into fruition just a little bit in this first arc. I don't know, it's, even though I know where Urahara is going, it does something to me even now, just seeing him reveal some of his hand early on. I'm just like, man, Urahara, man, he's so cool. And we see another glimpse of that, right?
Because he's so interesting, because he's like, obviously, we know where he goes, like you said, but he is framed as this mysterious character. You can't even see his eye, like, he's got the shadows over his eyes, and he shows up a lot in comic ways, like the fact that all of his crew is very silly, like there's like a fucking little girl who just could destroy shit with her boxing gloves, and she gets bullied by her brother.
Amazing comedic panel, by the way, where you see her in the boxing gloves, but it's so serious and she looks so badass, but it's so funny because she's like,
but also she's like this tiny little girl, and then she is actually super dangerous. Because it does get like because what I noticed about his conflict with Ichigo is because Ichigo usually is, he's that kind of like Luffy, where he doesn't have preconceptions, right, which is really important later on. But that kind of got twisted. He kind of made assumptions about Urahara, because Urahara is a character who shrouds himself, right? He literally has a hidden sword, right? Like,
yes.
And so, because he's like, oh yeah, a normal sword can't hurt me. Why am I dodging? And then, no, this is like, that can't be a Zanpakuto. Like, he's having preconceptions about this new world that he's still relatively new to. He hasn't even scratched the surface of this world of ghosts and spirits and stuff, even though it's been part of his life for, weeks to months, right? And where Urahara, who he's very deep into it. He's like literally one of the smartest guys. Like, we even see towards the end is when the scientists, they get Rukia's Gigai, and they're freaking out because of they find the Hogokyu, which I always mispronounce. But and I just noticed that as a foreshadowing. Like, oh yeah, this is because they're like, there's no one here in Solsticide who can make this. And it's like, well, that's because
But also, and I love that you mentioned the eyes being shrouded, because something I noticed when you first see his eyes is what happens. It's like a reveal, but it's such a soft reveal because he's like smiling, he's like giddy, and he's like yeah, lol, you got my hat, and it's like that's so Urahara though. It's like fundamentally like he's got all of this baggage, he has all these smarts, but at the end of the day, he's just a funny, goofy guy, and that's like what he'll always be, no matter what shit he gets into, no matter how many like transgressions he's committed. He will always just be this cool semi creepy uncle in the background, like being funny. And I love that Kubo. The first time you see his eyes, that is in the forefront. It's like it's this soft smile, and it's like, and it's not this big boom like this is all of Urahara now. It's more like, oh hey Urahara, what's up, man? Like I noticed that earlier today when I was reading that. I really appreciated that. I was like, that's such a cool like full reveal. And it's very Urahara. And I guess...
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, well, actually...
I was going to let you finish your thought, but...
No, keep going, because I was kind of segueing into something else, so you go ahead.
Okay, well, because I was going to say it's also interesting, just because the character I would say Urahara is sort of compared the most to is Aizen, right? Because, like, they're both incredibly intelligent, and, they're sort of, like, antithetic, like, counterparts to one another in some ways, and I was even thinking about how, like, because you were pointing out how it's like, yeah, Urahara is the shady character who, like, I even point out, like, he's a hidden blade, right? Like, he is, he is a goofy guy, but also there's a serious guy there as well. So with Aizen, there's a reference to that there's a Buddhist deity basically called Aizen Myo, who he's named from. Where basically, as I understand it, the important part with this god, this figure, is that if you look at statues, he has a very angry face, but he's described as a very compassionate god. And one thing I noticed in the reading is that because I think it was. Karin was seeing Chad, I think, or was it? Or no, Chad was protecting Karin and comparing her to Ichigo, and because she has this harsh exterior, both of them do, but underneath it is a compassionate, like they care about people, right? Like I think with her friends, she was like being angry at them she was chasing them away so they don't get fucking hurt by this hollow that Chad's fighting basically, right? So that's in line with Aizen Myo, this deity figure who he has an angry face, but he's compassionate. So Aizen is also named from that figure because Aizen, like Urahara, at the end of the day, like he's mysterious, but he's ultimately, there's an honesty there. Like he is also like his mask and his true self are both part of him in a sense. Where with Aizen, his mask is not part of himself at all. The glasses wearing Aizen, that's all like nice and kind. That I think Momo was the one, his like lieutenant who really liked him. Like that's not real. That's not part of him at all. So it just sort of like contrasts the two of them, where Urahara, even though he has these different masks and sides of himself, they are also all of him, where Aizen has this mask, but it's very much not him at all, in a sense.
Yeah,
so
that is cool.
Just something I've been thinking about.
That is a really, really, really cool observation. Yeah. Wow.
But yeah, and also, we'll get to Aizen later, but just like even thinking about like how anger ties to his character is like, ooh, I can't wait to talk about it. Because again, it's right there in that mythology, that religious god character, Mio. Yeah.
Yes, I didn't see. This is why we need you for all the references. I don't know.
I got it from there. It's a Real Hounds post. It's no longer up. It's but the web archive. I'll link it in the description. It's an interesting read. Where basically someone just there's some interesting things about Bleach, and it was cool. And that's he brings up the Aizen Mio one, and I'm like, oh, and yeah, I took from that because it's really neat to think about. So
yeah, nice. Epic stuff. And speaking of epic, I wish I had actually something in mind that was epic to talk about. But I do that sometimes. I'll speaking of, and then I'll try to ham fist another discussion. But sometimes my brain isn't quick enough. Let's see.
So speaking of Renji, who we weren't talking about at all.
Let's go, Renji. Bong.
I mean, I did pick because I actually have a whole ass video exploring Rukia and Renji's character arcs, and it's just interesting to see because Kubo will do this thing where, like, he has these characters interact, and we maybe assume certain things, right? Because, like, Renji's really angry towards her and being snotty towards her, but it's like, well, now knowing, because, like, they had a backstory together. They were literally childhood friends who lived in the shitty part of Soul Society and became Soul Reapers and transcended those conditions. But then, like, what happened is, Rukia, because Rukia's flaw as a character is she with her, when it comes to bonds, when it comes to the heart, she tends to run away. She tends to move away from things that she's close to so that she doesn't have to get hurt when they're lost. Like, that's what how the arc ends, is she she's literally Byakuya and Renji are coming to capture her, so she leaves the school. She leaves this place with these people that she's grown accustomed to and she genuinely likes, and she moves away from them. And she did the same thing with Renji, right? Like, because she was close to him and she moved away from him, and then she moved away from Soul Society into Ichigo's camp, and then now she's moving away from that too, and she just can't keep a lasting connection. And so it makes sense that, like, Renji would be, like, resentful to her, because it's like, oh, you abandoned me for this, and then you're also abandoning that, right? Like, just sort of that, I don't know, it just makes sense as to why he's like that. And also just Byakuya is just more, like, what I got of him is reading is he just has this presence of, he's just insanely strong and really setting up that fight for Soul Society. It's like, ooh, let's go.
Really, he was the weakest of all. Yeah.
Rip Bozo.
Rip Bozo. Well, no, I mean, I think I talk about this in my Rescue Arc video. What do I say? It was like, man, I wish I could remember that far back. I wish my brain. When we get to it, I'll mention it, because then by that time it'll probably revamp what I said in that video. Because I talk a lot about Byakuya in that video. I do remember at the very least. Albeit I don't remember. I don't think it was that cool. I think my coolest observations were more so Tosin and Komamura in that video. I had some cool shit to say, and yeah, their fight with Kenpachi. I remember I watched that like about a year ago, and I liked that section the most. But anyway, that's off topic. But it is cool how these. But like even in this segment of the story, we're already getting sort of what you're talking about. That kind of, that we get to peer a little bit more into Renji and how, because the entire time we literally start off that one scene where we first see Rukia behind bars, and Renji's like, "Yeah, you're gonna get executed." It's like, but based on how they're talking to each other, it's very clear they're both very familiar with each other. Like they're at least peers that at least used to see each other on the regular. So it's like, damn, that's hard. And the assumption is, since these are like really the only few Soul Reapers we've actually seen thus far. So the assumption would be, I'd imagine for a new viewer, because I find it hard to remember my perspective back then, the assumption would be like, I guess that's just how it is in the Soul Society world. It's dog eat dog world, man. But and it's like, and I guess Renji's just one of them, right? But then you get that little, even in that first scene of her in the Soul Society, at the end of it, he's like, oh, no, dumbass, like, it's your brother, he's gonna pull through. You're not gonna get executed. The sentence is gonna come down. Everything's gonna be fine. So it's like, oh, okay, well, in reality, Renji's like, he's actually like feels like a friend to Rukia, and it's more like he's slapping her on the wrist with everyone else, like, hey, you I don't want you to die, so don't do that again. Don't get in trouble again, right? Where he does harbor some resentment to her, like you were saying. Fundamentally, at the end of the day, more than anything else, he cares for her. And that comes out especially, in his later fight with Ichigo, which we'll get to eventually. But
yes.
Yeah.
Because, of course,
the
the reason I made that video is because Renji has the inverse flaw where when he wants something, he doesn't have the courage to go for it. Basically, like, he doesn't chase after Rukia on his own. He needs Ichigo to give him that push, basically. So, but we'll talk about that later.
Well, and I think, paralleling Ichigo, I think it goes hand in hand with what I was talking about earlier. It's because the thing that would have given Renji that drive forward is not there. It essentially abandoned him for what he thought was something else, another path. But when in reality, she felt like it was something she had to do to not re-experience that same scenario with, I'm forgetting his name, the Ichigo. I was going to call him Ichigo lookalike, right?
They even mention it, right? Like, oh, that that child looks like him.
Yeah,
They
it looks
say
like
something to
him,
that
right?
effect.
So, for Renji, you could say like the propulsion wasn't there because what gave him strength in the first place, what he cared for, like was not there with him, and not there reminding him of why he cares about her and what his source of strength is. What they experienced together. They were in a sense each other's strength because they helped motivate each other to strive forward. Like she is, the main reason he is where he is now. From my recollection, anyway. I could be misremembering some things, but hopefully I'm accurate in that deduction. That and because again, I think it goes hand in hand with Ichigo. It's like with Ichigo, sometimes he needs to be reminded of of what he's protecting. And who's with him, who's behind him, right? In the same sense as Zangetsu in this arc, I think it's the same with Renji, and why Renji can't do what Ichigo does is because, well, not only is Ichigo here with other people that are friends, constantly reminding him of the value of friendship, which Rukia is his friend, but Rukia was freshly just in the real world before he came here, and they have a bond that hasn't waned at all since. Whereas for Renji, it's been I guess presumably years and years since he's last even really interacted with Rukia, maybe. So yeah, I don't know. It's cool. I like it. It's a Renji cool, Ichigo cool, Rukia dope, Bleach pog.
Yeah, I feel like we're kind of winding down the discussion though. We didn't talk about Kon that much, because I like honestly his arc with the sort of like Soul Reapers just making these beings and throwing them away for existing, and just Kon's own value of life. I think I like that. But after that, it's like, yeah, Kon's there in some funny moments, but there's definitely a level of like, because I think Kubo as a like he has so many characters, and I the fact that he like, especially in fucking the Arrancar arc where you have so many of these like relatively minor characters getting like full ass fights, right? Like that's kind of insane, to do that because so he does have a lot like, and a lot of these characters are interesting in their own ways. Where Kon, I feel like he's because you brought up how it's like just the fact that like they have this like Karakura crew of characters who aren't really involved with the story, but like the fact that they are these characters who everyone cares about, and we do see them, and like obviously each Orihime protects them here, but and then we Karakura-chan, where Kon is like he's also kind of more connected to the soul stuff, that world. But obviously he doesn't really like when Ichigo's just in his spirit form the whole time anyway. He doesn't like he doesn't have that big of a role. So he still has some fun moments, but they're definitely he definitely just feels like I don't know, strange, I guess, because Kubo usually does except in the last arc when his health was failing, and there's definitely some concessions that I believe that I've heard that a lot of things that issues that people have with the Thousand Year Blood War in the manga, if they haven't been fixed in the anime, apparently Can't Fear Your Own World also like it's Hisagi's the main character who like people joke about because in the last chapter he's like, oh man, I totally have a Bankai, and that he never got to show up on the manga, right? So just stuff like that. But I don't know. So Kon's always felt weird to me. I don't know. I have heard that Kupo sort of butted heads with his editors a bit, so I wonder if maybe Kon was added as like a mascot character, and he did. Yeah, because
his presence, from my recollection too, his presence does go way down because in this arc he plays a really cool role in terms of like, emphasizing the theme of like the structural dogma. Yes, of these different societies. Ichigo's clashing against like literally like he goes from one existence or like one system of rules to another completely different system. In both scenarios, he's essentially rebelling against them. And Kon kind of relates to this stuff too, is because like it's that system that Ichigo is later fighting against that made Kon's purpose of existence essentially demise. They said, you are created, but your purpose is to die. Whereas Kon not only was given life back to him via Ichigo and Rukia, but he was also, it enlightened him to a new purpose that he chose. Where it was initially forced upon him, but you can see slowly but surely he actively like wants to help Ichigo in his body, and like and even is really sad when Ichigo and Rukia are not there. Of course, it's portrayed in sort of a comedic sense a lot, but there's enough scenes. I mean, especially we were talking about it earlier, and when they go to his mother's grave, you can especially see the scene when he's in his body and he's taken back and caring for Karin and Yuzu, and he puts them in the little outhouse. I don't know what you call it. But he's like actually he's like legitimately concerned, and you can really see that like he's really embraced this role because he decided that he wants to help Ichigo and Rukia, because you know they showed him that his life had more purpose than simply doom, you know, and death. So it's cool. It's cool. Like his role, other than gags and you know him being a comedy relief, is good. Honestly, is justifiable in of itself because he is funny.
I like the way you framed it, because like the fact that he exists, that he has like you know he has value in his own existence is, you know, that's enough, honestly. Like because another point I was going to make is like, because I think another series that people have that kind of issue with characters sort of fading to the background is Dragon Ball, because it introduces a lot of characters in its early stuff and they very much are not as relevant going forward into the later parts of the manga. But my stance on that is like, well, like, because yeah, Colin has some interesting stuff, but there's also a level at which like, well, I don't know how interesting this character would be. Like, how many hoops would Kubo have to go through to make him relevant? Like, and give him like a fight, for instance. Like, he's a mod soul. He's not necessarily like, you know, he's a little detached from the mechanics of the world, right? Or making so all of Ichigo's friends should be Soul Reapers. There was art of Tatsuki as a Soul Reaper, and that would have been cool because she's pretty cool. But you know, so but then there's this level of like, you know, I don't really need every character to get a lot of things. I can still enjoy them, you know, for what they give to the story. And the fact, and also just the fact is like, especially odd when people say like people like Soul Society so much, because like, you know, a lot of what Soul Society does it's introducing us to all these Soul Reaper characters who then go on to become major characters in later arcs and get fights of their own alongside their protagonists, right? So it's like. Yeah. I mean, like all the things that you like about Soul Society, like all these characters, they're still in the manga. They're still there. They're still good. I don't know why Soul Society is somehow the best one. You know, that's just my stance on like, yeah, even though, like, because Colin gets I do really like his arc here, but you know, it's just, I don't know, it's just more like speaking about, you know, just it's a, you know, I guess I don't think it's much of a wasted opportunity, even though it's just interesting. It's more interesting to just think about it from like why did this happen, and you know what, and yeah, but his character accomplishes plenty, like you said. So
yeah, at least in this, and you know, I might feel like he gets shafted later on. I honestly don't have a strong opinion on that yet. I'd have to you know get to that in the reread, and we'll see what I have to say. You know, I might agree. Even we'll see. Because I mean, I even have some qualms with how certain. I mean, Chad is one of them. From my recollection, I didn't care for how he was. So I feel like he was shafted in 1,000. But again, I'm basing this off of a few years ago, so it could be I get to it and I have a newfound appreciation for him. But I honestly,
I don't know. I mean, I'll try to get what I can, but because you know,
yeah, like from what I remember, like it's not looking too good for my boy, honestly. From what I remember, it's not looking too good for him. We'll see. Other than that, yeah, I'm curious because I don't know if you know this. I might have mentioned this earlier when we were talking about 1,000 Year Blood War anime, but they have added several additional scenes to 1,000 Year Blood War, and like Yuha Baha even, and one of which I did watch, and it was actually pretty good, and I was like, oh wow. We didn't get this in the manga, so yeah, I'm interested to read and see like if I feel like there's anything actually missing, because apparently Kubo himself acknowledges that he might have included more if circumstances.
Like he said, no, because his health, he was struggling with his health, so he I think he was considering even just like stop, you know, not finishing the manga at some point, but like because of like, you know, he got like there were words that from people who were fucking dying that really wanted to see the end of Bleach. He pushed himself to finish the manga, and I'm sure there were concessions made there. Like he made something that he was satisfied with ultimately, but I you know, I definitely feel like there was some concessions there. Another manga I read recently that you can really feel the weight of the author's health affecting the final parts of the manga, Shaman King. which it actually just straight up ended its Shonen Jump run and was finished in another magazine. But even so, you can still very much tell that it had a lot of like there's still good stuff in the ending for sure, but there's definitely a level of like, oh yeah, his health was probably rough there. Like you can which it's I never
yeah.
even if it ultimately like makes the story less good, like I'd never blame the author, because I think that's one of the things that bugs me about Bleach is that people just seem to have no respect for Kubo or creators in general. That also just happens to lean towards some things said about Kubo. So,
yeah, and I'll say this. I'll be the first to agree with you on that front. Like, don't take it personally. Don't levy it against the author. I always levy the criticism solely against the work, because I am a little bit cold in the fact that like if someone tells me like, oh yeah, but like you don't understand this, I was like, well, but that really doesn't change the fact that it could have been better though. Like I get that there was real life circumstances, but the fact of the matter remains, like it could, like I know it could have been better, and I expected better because we've gotten better in the past. I've encountered things like that before, and people tell me that. I'm like, well, yeah, I would never hold it against the author knowing that, but that still doesn't change the fact that I wish things could have turned out to where it was what it could have been. Yeah. Always.
Well, because you say, oh, it could have been better, but like when I try to think of like the broad systemic conditions these stories are made in, then it's kind of hard. Like it could be better means like completely revising like how manga is made in the first place, or how anime is made in the first place, right?
And that's something that I've talked about before as well, and that
yes.
It should be changed.
Yeah,
because
like a good example is honestly like Jujutsu Kaisen, where it's like the fucking conditions it's being made in are horrible, but they're still putting out good stuff. But we can't use that as justification where it's like, well, this other studio is putting out bad stuff under bad conditions. Why can't they? We don't want. In a way, we don't want them to be putting out good stuff under bad conditions, because that means the bad conditions are going to subsist because, well, they made good stuff out of it. That's good, right? No, we want good conditions making good things. Like that's the ideal. Right.
Yeah. I mean, like, look at like I remember. I remember all the way back then seeing like. So I don't know if it was. I don't remember if it was on Reddit or something. Like someone had like a side by side image of like Kubo at some event celebrating the end of Bleach versus like Kubo years and years ago. Well, not super like I guess 5 or 6, 7 years before that, and it was like a side by side image, and like. The difference and like how much it looks like he's aged, it was like insane. And I was like, bro, this is only in X amount of years. I remember looking at like, dude, what Shonen Jump schedule does to
exactly when you look at just how many authors, like I think about like the Golden Trio, which was Dragon Ball, Slam Dunk, and Yu Yu Hakusho. Toriyama can't fucking draw anymore. He's not drawing Dragon Ball Super. He offers some corrections. Inoue, who did Slam Dunk, he's technically still drawing Real and Vagabond, but Vagabond hasn't had a chapter in ages. Real has a very slow and inconsistent release schedule. The art is still really good, but but it's just he doesn't have the speed anymore, obviously. And fucking Togashi has been struggling with severe back issues since the year I was born, 1991. He was talking about it during Yu Yu Hakusho, relatively early in Yu Yu Hakusho, and like. There's just so many authors, like fucking the author of Saint Seiya has continually been drawing. Apparently, in one of his drawing fingers, the cartilage in between some of his bones is just gone. So he has excruciating pain when he draws. Like, it's a fucking grindhouse. I want things to be better for these authors because they are destroying themselves. Fucking Oda has severe health issues. Kishimoto doesn't really do manga anymore. Kubo doesn't really do manga anymore. Like, those aren't even older authors. They're like, it's like fucking Black Clover had to move magazines because the author was struggling. Like,
and even when they do a project like Toriyama and Kishimoto, they're like, yeah. I'll write it a little bit. I ain't touching a pen, bro. You can draw this shit.
Yeah, it's like I can't blame them at all, because like it's a fucking like because we do have authors who do put out multiple manga and multiple hits, like fucking Hiro Mashima is still going. Rumiko Takahashi, Ranma and Half, Urusei Yatsura. She's still making manga. She's made like old fucking hits in the 70s, and she's still publishing stuff regularly. Like she's that's amazing.
Hiro Mashima, okay. I know. I don't know the other. I don't know the woman you're referring to. I don't know.
Yeah, one of the most important shonen manga authors ever. But okay.
I honestly, this is how like.
You probably know her for Inuyasha at least.
Okay, I do know Inuyasha.
She has like 4 hits. Like she's and Urusei Yatsura is incredibly important in just anime and manga in general. But
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
See, this is just how uninformed I am. Like you're going to be surprised. I'm telling you now, you're going to be more
no, it's
surprised
fine.
down the line.
We all have, like you have areas that you're really strong in, and I'm not even. Yeah, but anyway, go ahead, finish your thought with Hiromashima. I think.
Surely, Hot Boy, you have at least some things you know. There's at least one category where you have a wealth of information. Hey, you'd be surprised. I don't think in any category do I have any wealth of knowledge. Like the fact that I've made it this far in life is actually more of a blessing than anything else. But regardless, fake it till you make it. I've been faking it the entire time, baby. My joke is now lost. It's gone on too long. I was just offhanded comment saying like you can't compare anyone to Hiromashima.
I was just trying to be nice.
He is literally the GOAT of mangaka. Like he's on a tier of his own. He's peerless. He's the peerless one. Okay. I mean, has been going strong.
There was someone made a meme image of Hiromashima with like all the things he's involved in, and with this like he's storyboarding for Fairy Tail Century Quest. He's Eden Zero. He was drawing that. He was like working on like advising on like games and other anime and media. And then he just quote tweets and says, "I also play Monster Hunter." So like,
yeah, guys,
it
I
was
do
great.
everything.
Yeah, he's a monster. So
dude, I even think I wish I remember what it was. He was even getting into a new creative hobby. I don't remember what it was though.
I think I remember hearing about that, but I don't remember.
Yeah, but I don't remember what it was,
like,
and I was just like, dude, how does he have time to do this? He's literally doing like 2 other manga, and like he's doing.
There's
this
actually
too.
a one shot by another manga author who recounted her time working with Hiromashima as an assistant, and he just seems like a really chill guy. Like he literally from the sounds of it, he literally bought his assistant's Monster Hunter so that he could have someone else to play with. Basically,
funny.
like,
That's so funny, man.
He's
Oh
cool.
my God. Yeah.
But anyway, I think we're about done with talking about Bleach. It sounds like we have been out, unless you have any more points to bring up, because good discussion, but it's not about Bleach anymore, and that's generally a sign to me that's like, well, I think we're about done.
yeah, you're definitely right. If I can somehow come out with something out of my noggin, no, apparently not. I can't.
There's definitely good stuff. Like we didn't talk about like the Parakeet arc that much, but it's like it's good. I don't really have that much to say about it.
Yeah, it's one of those where it's really good, but not too much to say. It is what you see. Not much to extrapolate there. I don't really got much to say there either. I guess that's it.
Yeah, but I mean, honestly, like at least looking forward, I'm excited because like as good as much as I enjoyed this arc, like don't get me wrong, I definitely like at least historically, it's been my least favorite arc in Bleach. But that's not a slight against it at all. That's because
this is actually speaking of which, this is the I had a conversation with a friend last night who was also rereading Bleach. Potentially for watching this podcast, although he said he's not going to watch it, which is weird because I said like, "Oh, you're doing it for the podcast." He's like, "No." I was like, "Well, then why are you rereading Bleach right when I'm reading?" Whatever. Anyway, yeah. But I was talking about this last night with him, and I was like, I love this arc and it's super super fun. But I remember talking about crafts when we were first talking about Bleach, and we were talking about the subtext to Bleach and how I feel like in this arc, the subtext like. It really clear to me that like Kubo goes way more into subtext the deeper you go into the story. Like this is where it's the most like the least amount of, even though there's still a good amount of subtext in this first arc, there's way more later on. And so which is why I'm really looking forward to unpacking the subtext way later on, because I feel like there's just like consistently at least in a quantity when you get the amount, I feel like there's way more stuff where you can really read into. Whereas in this arc, I feel like more or less there was a lot of like thematic through lines that were a little bit more clear, didn't really necessitate an explanation or one of us to say something about it, which is probably why this is not a super lengthy discussion.
A lot of my observations where I felt like were less about this material itself and more about the arc, the comparing it to the whole, like looking at the whole picture with foreknowledge and being like, oh, this like the or you like with the doll, right? Like on the surface, it's just like, oh, it's like a cute, he's into crafts, like I like him and Chad being these serious looking characters who also have this affection for more feminine things, right? But also this specific one kind of ties to like his whole character arc about like his sore spots with his dad and being a doctor and how that ties into the final fight with Yobak and the silver arrow, and it's like it's just this little thing, right? So that was, that's where a lot of it is coming from, like looking at the whole from just this one part, right? So even then, it's like, yeah, because the setup is so good, right? Like all these ideas are here from the very beginning, right? Like, and that's really good and important. But I agree. I think it gets so much more interesting later. So I'm really excited.
Yeah, can't wait. Alrighty.
So yeah, thank you guys for listening, and we will see you next time for the next Bleach discussion. It's going to be about, like I said, 9-10 episodes. So yeah, I think I'll probably do it like 8 episodes or 8. Well, because I was the Arnkar arc ends at volume 48 exactly. Like I remember that sticking out to me in my head. So we might just do like 8 volumes until then. But I don't know. I'll check and see when, because I'm not fussed about getting to like a really good ending point each reading. Because again, I just feel like Bleach has so much going on that we're probably going to talk about every volume. Like we didn't go into every one of the poems this time, which is fine. But because I feel like the poems are really important for, not important, but they're really good at signposting certain like ideas for certain characters and giving you a lens at which to view the character. So that's good to know. But anyway, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.